since we're starting again, if Meg, when you do the gushing bit, you could just mention just me. I feel like it's not fair to mention them when me and you started this together. So maybe just mention me and go.
So I did do quite a lot on Dustin, but I can do a bit more if you like.
No, I'm joking.
I
am joking.
I think we've had too much Dustin. Welcome to the Honest Designers Show, your transparent look into life as a modern designer. My name's Tom Ross, and I'm the founder at designcuts.com. And this week I'm joined by my fellow Brit and hand lettering expert, Ian Barnard, American retro design expert, Dustin Lee, and the incredibly talented South African illustrator, Lisa Glantz. Today, we're super excited to welcome designer, illustrator, and long-time listener Meg Sayers to the show. Meg was one of the first daily challenges to come from the podcast, and her illustration work has started to really take off. So much so that she's feeling overworked and completely burnt out. We tried to rally around Meg today to figure out the best solution and discuss at length effective ways for how she could increase her prices. Oh, and before we get into today's show, I wanted to let all the listeners know that the Honest Designers Show is now officially on social. You can follow us at Honest Designers on Facebook and Instagram, and at On Des Podcast at Twitter, as some very sneaky person is squatting on the Honest Designers handle. Anyway, go check us out, connect, and please comment. We would love to chat with you. So without further ado, let's get into the show. So this week we're super excited because we are joined by another listener. We're joined by the lovely Meg Sayers, which, Meg, you are Meg_ladoodle at Instagram.
Yeah, that's right.
Amazing. So
well done, Tom.
Nailed that. Meg, you've probably heard, has been mentioned on the show a bunch of times. When she started out in illustration, she was a self-professed complete novice, had a rougher style, shall we say, in the early days, but definitely showed tons of potential. And then your style just seemed to develop at a pace like I've never seen before. So in a matter of weeks of doing the Honest Designer Style Daily Challenge, you were just creating these beautiful illustrations. And we've all just really loved following your entire journey. It's been really inspiring. Yeah. So to have you on the show is an absolute pleasure. Welcome to the Honest Designer Show.
Thank you very much, Tom. I am going to just say thank you to all of you, actually, for the daily challenge thing. It's a bit embarrassing gushing, but it's made a huge difference to not just my career, but to my life as well. So, and Dustin, it was really, really inspiring seeing you do that.
Thanks. But hey, just a little side note, I actually told her to say that. So, anyways, thank you though.
You obviously won't catch this listening at home, but Meg was actually saying how she thought I was, probably the most inspiring one out of the hosts right for this recording. Isn't that right, Meg?
Yeah, that's right.
She's got a photo of you by a computer that just keeps you going every day.
No, it's really cool though, and we've talked about this on the show. Dustin and you, Lisa, with your daily challenges have just, I think, inspired quite a few people, and Meg is living proof that it works, not only in terms of developing your talent and your style dramatically, but it sounds like there's a lot of good potential stuff coming from it, Meg. So do you mind super quickly kind of getting us up to date from like day dot to where you are now, and how that is actually benefiting you professionally and just the opportunities that are now starting to present themselves?
Yeah, definitely. So I always used to just do illustrations straight onto my computer using like a Wacom tablet. And I bought the iPad and wanted to get into hand-drawn illustration and actually being able to properly draw. And I wasn't really getting there. And then you guys mentioned the the daily challenge thing. And I just thought that was a really good way to start being able to hand draw illustrations. So I started doing that on the side. I do a lot of graphic design work and sort of web design and branding and that kind of thing. And
it's for yourself, right? I mean, you work for yourself?
Yes, I'm self-employed, yeah. Yeah, and I've always wanted to try and tie illustration into what I do. And I have done that over the years, but I was struggling, and it was almost like, when you don't do something very often, you then manage. In fact, I've heard you say this, Lisa, at the beginning when you started, you you can do it, and then you get this job and you do it, and then it's not quite what you thought it was going to be. Because you're not practicing it all the time. So
exactly.
Now it's like 130 days or something later, and I've just got this portfolio of work to show people that I can do it, and also to show myself that I can do it more and more. And I'm starting to find ways that I can weave it into my daily work as well. So it's been really exciting. I do have a really heavy workload now, but it's not all illustration work. It's, I think, actually a little bit of the whole thing has given me a confidence boost, and that just seems to have gone into everything from my work to my personal life as well.
It really does, right?
It's
I
weird.
noticed this with social media so much. You start speaking more confidently and viewing yourself and your work in a different way, and I think that's often not talked about that much. Can I ask, how does it feel? Because I see the comments you get. You're building this real fan base around your illustration. How does that make you feel?
Oh, it's just lovely. Really, really lovely. I never really thought anyone would be very interested, because people around you generally aren't that interested unless they're designers or illustrators. But so to find a community of people that are genuinely interested, like today, I posted something yesterday that I wasn't that pleased with. And there's this really lovely guy who's obviously an Honest Designers fan as well. I can't remember his name. Oh, he did both of your portraits.
Andrew.
All three of you.
Yeah, he's so talented.
He's so cool.
He's been sending me these lovely messages, giving me encouragement and giving me advice on how to do better. And I was saying to him today that I was thinking of sort of not doing this realistic style that I've been trying, because I didn't really like how it was looking. And he's just, it's been lovely, and you don't get that much in real life. So
the creative community is the best, I swear.
And do you find that, because since I've been doing this, what's blown my mind is, like, I mean, you're meeting people from across the world. It's incredible. Like, you would never ever had that opportunity before. Like, you would never have done it in any other way, really, essentially. And now you're meeting like-minded people that you get on with and you never met. And I mean, as you and I have been joking for how long, if only we lived close to each other. So I love that part. I don't know. Yeah.
It is really cool. Lovely. And I think also it just opens your creative eyes as well. So you get inspiration from further afield than you do when you're just sat in your little office at home. So, yeah.
And you mentioned it's starting to feed into your work. Is that your existing clients, you're now adding that as an extra service? You can do illustration, or are you starting to attract new clients around the illustration work standing on its own 2 feet?
Bit of both. I'm working on quite a fun little thing at the moment, which is a really good marrying of the two things, where it's an app, it's a Gmail plugin, and they wanted some cool little brand character to go with it. In fact, Lisa, I've been thinking of you loads lately, because I'm drawing a narwhal, and I can't say a narwhal. Do you know what I mean?
No, I know the one. They're like the unicorn of the sea, right?
Yeah.
Oh, right. Oh, yes, yeah.
So all day today I've been drawing this narwhal with a pipe blowing bubbles, an umbrella on his head, wearing a smoking jacket on a laptop.
That is so sweet.
They're the days, right? You look at that and you're like, this isn't a real job.
Yeah.
It's very real, but it's like, how lucky am I that this is actually what I get to do?
Yeah, definitely. And I think that's one of the reasons I'm a bit frustrated, is because actually that project is really, of all the projects I'm working on right now, the most exciting for me creatively, and being paid a decent rate for it. So that's also fantastic. But I'm not giving it my all, because I'm too busy with all these other projects. And actually, when I take a step back from it, I think that is the project I should be focusing on. But actually, it's a side project, and it shouldn't be.
So
but I'm
it's
too busy.
incredible how well you are doing it and what you're building. But part of the reason we wanted to have you on the show is because you mentioned you were getting burnt out. And I think you're almost downplaying it now. So given that we are the honest designers, do you mind talking for a couple of minutes about the reality of where your head's at and truly how that looks? Because I think that's hopefully something people can relate to.
Yeah. So I think the last 6 months or so, I've been working every evening and every other weekend. And to start with, that felt really exciting, and I was really pushing forward with everything. But now I'm losing the will to live slightly. That's a little dramatic, but yeah, I'm losing the enthusiasm, and I'm just very tired. And
do you know how many hours a day you're doing?
So
roughly?
I tried to tot this up because it feels like I'm working all of them. But the other big thing that I should mention is that I'm a mum, so I've got an 8-year-old son, and I have to pick him up from school 3 times a week early. So I finish work, come home, cook him tea, do all the mum stuff, and it's not till like 8:30 till I get him into bed and I can get back to work. So I'm kind of like on the go all that time until about I don't know, maybe like 11 o'clock. So for me, it feels like I've worked from 8:30 till 11 in the evening.
Well, you
maybe
have,
later.
essentially.
Yeah, I mean, being a mum is absolutely a job in its own right. So you essentially have 2 jobs right now.
Yeah. But I worked out. I did do I use all the apps, like all the time tracking and any app I can find to try and make my life easier. And one of them's something called Office Time, and not Office Time, Rescue Time, and it tracks what you're doing on your computer and gives you a report of how much work you've done each week. And it was 40 hours generally, and I think if you consider that's around being a mum, that's quite a lot of work.
Yeah, absolutely.
Do you know how much from the Rescue Time, how much of that is, because I know Rescue Time will track like how much are you in Illustrator or design programs versus emails versus the web. Do you know how much of the time is spent on actual real design work?
I feel like it's about maybe 70% design work.
Oh wow, that's really good.
I think so, but I would have to get it up to have a look at it.
Yeah.
But I did another thing the other day, which was I worked out how many hours I've billed versus how many hours I've worked, and I'd billed for like 30 hours a week, but obviously I'm doing like 40 hours a week work, so it's 10 extra hours of just project management and emails and stuff,
which I think unfortunately goes with the territory.
It does,
to an extent. So how have you been feeling, Meg? Obviously burnt out, but can you dig into that a little bit?
Just like you said earlier, like being a headless chicken. I feel like sometimes easy tasks like replying to an email suddenly become a really long task because you can't word it properly. And
preach.
The smallest things become these mountains.
Yeah, it's true. Sometimes a little problem suddenly becomes a really, really big problem. For example, I lost nearly a whole day the other day to line heights. I became completely obsessed with the line heights in this in this bit of UI that I was working on, and I was really moaning to the guy sat next to me pretty much all day. Whenever he spoke to me, I'd be saying, I don't know, maybe it should be 1.5 or maybe it should be 1.7, and then the next day I woke up and I just thought, that's nuts. Like, what was I doing? I was just so tired I couldn't get past this tiny thing.
You get blinkered. So are you, by the sound of it, you're in the phase where you start getting the brain fog and you can feel the burnout coming on, but you haven't completely broken yet? Because I've talked about my experiences with this way back when on the show, and where you are having full on like anxiety attacks, you can't get out of bed, you've like actually your health is really, really suffering, and it takes you to a very, very bad dark place when you are fully burnt out. Hopefully you're not quite there yet.
No,
but
think so.
I'd like to try and offer a cautionary real life tale of you don't want to get there. And I actually ignored a lot of the red flags and warning signs. And one of those was people around me saying, you're going to burn out. You can't keep this going. And I was trying to keep it like a challenge where I'm like, yes, I can. I'll show you. I'll keep it going for my whole life. And then a year later, it's like, yeah, I told you so. So please don't go down that path.
Yeah. So is there a reason why you've got so much work on? Is it because you're, what's the reasoning behind the sort of, because I was just thinking about when I was sort of in a similar position where my lettering was still a side project and I had my website designs and I had my branding and stuff like that, and I really wasn't enjoying that, and I had loads of it to do, but all I wanted to do was the lettering. And so I was sort of like just constantly working because I had to do this, but I'd always spend it on lettering, and then I was behind on all this. But it was like that transition period until the lettering could become the main bag.
Yeah.
Is illustration is that something you want to make the actual, if you could just do illustration all day, is that something you could do, or do you still want to keep all the other bits on as well?
Yeah, and I would like to completely move over to illustration at some point. I'm not entirely sure. I feel confident that I can make a living doing what I'm doing now, so that's the scary thing, isn't it? Is that moving over completely and not really knowing if I could charge the same day rate for doing illustration as I could for the other stuff.
Well, first thing to note is you don't need to do that in one jump. You can have a very, very gradual, essentially risk-free transition.
Definitely.
You're not jumping out of a day job. You can build this up alongside what you're doing and prove the concept and grow it and grow it and grow it until you have that financial security behind it.
Yeah, I think that's what I'm doing. I think that,
Is there a reason? I mean, unless I'm being silly, but is there a reason why you don't bill for those 50 hours that you work, that you're only billing for 40?
I don't know. I mean, maybe I do. Sometimes I think, does my hourly rate, is it the rate that it is because it kind of soaks up some of the extra time that isn't billable time?
Look, I mean, obviously there's some things we can't bill for, but I guess what I'm asking is, are you sure that you definitely, charging? In other words, you're not undercharging, even though a project's taking you 5 hours and you're actually only charging for 3. I'm just questioning. You don't want to be undercharging when you're working so hard, and it just seems wrong. But I don't know. Is that something you can maybe look at? Because then what I'm saying is, then ultimately you can maybe take on less work because you're actually charging for the full time that you're working.
Yeah, I know what you mean, and it's definitely. I mean, it's something I've been going through the last couple of years, is sort of putting my rates up, and I feel like I'm quite comfortable with where they are now compared to other designers in the area.
Yeah.
To the point where sometimes I feel a little bit uncomfortable because I think, I really ought to be doing a really good job because they're paying me a really decent rate. I wouldn't want to go too much higher than that because it makes...
Yes.
Why? Why exactly?
Well, I think when you're charging someone like a decent, higher rate, you really ought to be providing value for that rate. So
presumably you are. Pressure.
I'm sure I am, but if I ever feel like I'm under-delivering, then I feel worse if I'm charging a higher rate. Does that make sense?
Has anyone told you you've under-delivered?
No.
But then just keep going up.
Yeah, like seriously, you're not running a charity. You're running a business.
Yeah.
And go on.
Just because I've thought about this whole thing about putting your rate. If someone comes to you with a job that you don't really want to do, the sort of advice I often get given as a freelancer is, we'll just put your rate up loads, and then if they still want to do it, then you're quids in because you're going to earn loads of money from doing it and it's worth doing. But I've done that once when I didn't have time to do the job, so I put my rate right up, won the job, and then rushed this job out on a ridiculously high rate and was just thinking, this isn't fair to the client because I'm rushing something and they're paying twice as much as they should be.
Yeah,
This is a
wouldn't do that.
mindset thing, though, because you're looking at the negative of letting that client down. You should be looking at the positive, that you've basically validated a higher price for your services because someone was willing to pay it.
Yeah. I mean, that is the rate that I charge everybody now. So that was a good
Yeah.
process to go through.
Exactly. But can't you go through that again? Because I know maybe it isn't that simple, but it feels like it's always as simple. If you're getting work in and you're too busy, you increase your rate and earn the same money for less work.
And are you accepting work because you have a fear of turning people away that won't come back to you? Okay, yeah. Because I had the same thing when I was freelancing.
I feel like I need to keep them happy, because if they've got another big project in 3 months' time and I haven't got any work, then they'll go to somebody else.
The biggest advice I can give you to that is, because I used to, as I said, struggle with the same thing, is that you just have to trust that you will get work, even if you turn it away. Work's going to come. And I can tell you why you will always get work, because I mean, just from my interaction I've had with you, social media, and now meeting you now, I can see you're a hard worker. You have pride in your work. You're not a slacker. So it's going to happen. You will always get work, and even if you have a slow month, I have a feeling that you'd probably like make it work. You'd find work out there or something. So it is that fear thing that you're going to, oh my gosh, if I say no to this guy, I'm never going to get work from him again. But that's actually not necessarily the case. You can obviously, say to them in a particular way, and say, as much as I'd love to do your work right now, I am so full. I won't be, giving you a proper job that I want to, that you deserve. Can the job wait? Because I have a gap in maybe a month. If the job can't wait, I understand. But, I'm here whenever you need me, when I'm available, etc., etc. So you just word it properly. But you can't kill yourself over fear. That's the only thing that maybe you need to...
Have you ever been without work?
I have had, yeah, occasionally. I think last year I had a quiet month or two over the summer, but it wasn't ever completely no work at all.
It sounds like you're in a very strong position, and I know there's going to be a lot of listeners who are actually going to be quite jealous of where you're at, because it is fantastic. Like, to be getting, you've got the talent, you've got the drive, you've got the business set up and steadily going along in the right direction. I think you could be charging more. It's kind of like everything is there, but I feel like, as Lisa said, you're operating a little bit from a place of fear, and maybe a combination of the fear and the burnout. You can't see the wood for the trees, and actually maybe it is simply as clear as looking at a pricing decision. I wouldn't mind, actually. Do you mind listing 5 things you do? I think you said you work 40 hours and charge for 30. Out of those 10 hours, do you mind listing a handful of things that you're doing that you're not charging for? And I would be super intrigued if the other 3 hosts think any of those should be chargeable.
Responding to emails, scheduling is my number one thing I hate.
Scheduling what?
Scheduling work.
Right, okay.
And
when you say scheduling work, you mean planning it for yourself?
Well, I guess it's not just scheduling, is it? It's planning, project planning a job, but trying to work out when I can do it. And then, just general proposals, that kind of thing. I think that's a lot of... Oh, and the other thing I'm doing quite a bit of now is I've got a couple of other freelancers who, when I'm really, really busy, I get them to help me out with stuff. So I'm spending a lot of time managing them.
Training, yeah.
Yeah. So, or actually not so much training now, because I've found a really great freelancer, but it's just the organising, like making sure that the project's all set up for her, because and talking to the client and all of that kind of thing. How many was that? Was that 4, maybe? I think
4 or
project
5,
management covers a lot of those things.
Yeah. Do you want to be managing people and growing a team underneath you, or would you prefer just to be super focused and not have that?
Yeah, I don't really want to start a design agency. I'd rather just be the best I can be as me, and charge the most I can for being the best, if that makes sense.
So
Perfect
what's
sense.
stopping you from increasing
Doing
rates?
that?
Like we've just had this conversation, and what's stopping you from walking away right now and doing that in your business?
It's that tomorrow I'll have an email from somebody, or 3 emails from people who I somehow need to not just ignore that email. I can't just be like, I have to at least send an email back saying I'm too busy, I suppose. Is when we're now saying I'm going to say I'm too busy.
Or not necessarily. You could literally just start increasing your rates. And if you increase your rate by 10 or 20%, if you're as busy as you are currently for another month, it's not the end of the world if you've been doing it for 6. But if suddenly you're equally busy but earning 10 or 20% more, great. In that case, increase it again. And keep doing it until you're too expensive for some people, but the 75% or 50% or whatever, or 60% that can pay the much higher rate, you're working with less people at a higher rate.
Yeah, that's so true. I don't know why, when you're actually thinking about real people, like I've got a particular job in my head right now, and it's a client that I've been working for a couple of years, and now all of a sudden they've got a big project coming up. And when the email came in, I just sort of, my heart sunk a bit rather than feeling excited. But the idea of saying to her, yeah, I can help you, but it's going to be quite a bit more than last time, I need to get over that, I think, because that's what's stopping me. Is I feel like I want to help her. I don't want to let her down.
I don't want to put you on the spot, but these are some of my favorite awkward moments on the show.
Yeah.
Can we have a hypothetical conversation?
Oh my goodness.
So I'm going to pretend to be your client.
That's the worst.
We could call this episode Awkward Designers.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, that works for me, definitely.
Okay, so I'm coming to you, and I'm your client right now. You need to tell me that you're going to be upping my rate. How would you explain that?
I'd say that the cost of living has gone up, and I don't know.
But I don't care about that, because that's your problem, not mine. And
one thing I was thinking was that I could say something, because this particular client knows that I get some help from another freelancer, and I would just say that, to have the expertise of 2 of us, that it's obviously going to cost more. Yeah, I'm really good at this.
See, I wouldn't know what to say. That's why we have Tom to tell us.
But Meg, I've got exactly an example of that, because that's what I wanted to tell you. Was when I was working for an events company, and I happened to stumble upon their rate. It was literally double what I was charging, and I questioned her, because, so in other words, what she would charge. Say I charged her, I don't know, 800 Rand for a flyer design. She charged the client 1,200 Rand for the same job. She wasn't doing anything with it. And when I queried that, she said, "Well, I'm building in the fact that I have to manage you, and I have to organize the job, and etc. etc. So there's nothing wrong with saying to your client, I'd love to help you. In fact, I'm really keen to help you, but I am going to have to outsource it to my, very trusty person, that. So there will be project management fees. So it won't just be the design fees anymore, but you won't regret it, because obviously I will be overseeing it, and I'll know exactly, your style, and etc. 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 Like really sort of flower it out."
Yeah.
And there's nothing wrong with that. Clients understand that. They know that. They know what it means to manage something.
I've literally just written down project management fees, because that just sounds really professional, and I just wouldn't have.
So Lisa, to make it slightly more difficult, because I totally agree with that approach, what about when Meg hopefully reaches her goal of not having to outsource stuff, and it is just her, she can't use that line?
Well, obviously this is like your in between while you're trying to get back onto not having to outsource. So when the next person approaches you and says, "Oh, geez, why are you double the price than last time?" And you can say, "Well, my skills have improved dramatically, and I feel that what I offer is a lot more than I used to, I'm also I only take on a certain amount of projects because I like to focus my energies completely on the project. You can tell them that you're exclusively designing now. It's not just like you designing for Arthur and Martha. It's like you really, in other words, they're buying a slot.
I can
They're buying
I can
like
say a story that relates exactly to this that happened
Yeah.
yesterday to me. What, Lisa, you're talking about? I have a contractor who writes articles for me, and she used to charge 220 pounds, I think, a day or something like that. And she said, by the way, I'm bringing it up to 350 pounds
wow,
a day.
I want her job.
Yeah. And so I said, well, why is it going up? And she said exactly that. She said, well, I'm like, my training in SEO is much better now. And I know, because she has me ranking for things that are making me money, that it has gotten better. And she said that, and I honestly thought to myself, I know without a doubt that this pays for itself over and over, way more than the $350 it cost me for a few days of work from her every so often. And I just didn't care. I mean, I literally wrote back to her and said, hey, as long as what you're doing is bringing me in way more money than I'm paying you, I really don't care. And
then next week you get another.
Yeah, it's 500 pounds.
Yeah.
and it's fine. I mean, she does such a good job. So I think that if people can see that the value is there, they don't care. People only, I think, question a rate increase if they're like, you're just a sunk cost. It doesn't bring in any money for me. I don't see any result from it.
Because Meg, you got to remember, they're coming back to you for a reason. I mean, they obviously you're giving them the service that they need, and you're reliable, and you tick all those boxes for them. So you like taking away a huge headache for them from so many point of views, and they must pay for that. It's not free. So yes, the design is one thing that they're paying for. They're also paying for the luxury. I mean, I know this sounds extreme, but the luxury of working with you because you know how to deal with them, their project, their thing, their everything. So it's not free.
I think as well, you're coming from a position of strength. The worst thing for clients is where they can feel your desperation. You need this work. It's all about you. And ultimately, they might be empathetic to that, but they're not going to care enough to, just chuck their hard-earned money at you. But when you're coming from a position of strength, of honestly saying, look, the deal is I'm being overbooked right now so much, I'm having to turn people away, and it's not fair. In order to be able to work with you and a very select number of my other favorite clients, I have to increase my rate to make this sustainable and do the best job I possibly can for you. Otherwise, I'm worried I'm going to be spread too thin. So you can look forward to my best work I've ever done for you, and I really want to over deliver, but this is my new rate. That's assertive. That's not pushy.
That's really brilliant, because that's like the words you used in the other episode when I was telling you, tell me some words to say in the DMs that's going to help me. And so I like what you said there about, the sort of the favorite client, saying that they're a favorite client. That will make them feel good. And the reasons why.
And it's social proof. They go, oh, she's being overbooked. They have no idea. They just think you're doing a good job for them. But when they go, oh, wow, people are literally banging her door down to work with her, they go, gosh, she must be good. We definitely want to keep working with her. Even more than they think now.
Because I always worry when I'm asking, let's go back to my builder, a builder.
Yes, Bob. We haven't had him in a while.
I missed him. How is he?
But if you say oh, okay, we want this job done, and they come back and go, yeah, I can do that Friday, and you're like, that's a bit quick. You worry what's going on there, because if you're that free. Yep. And you're not that booked up, are you not that good and stuff like that? So
yeah, for sure. Meg, so what would the ideal be? So you said you're doing 40 hours a week right now. Given that you're a mum and you don't want to feel burnt out as well, how many hours do you want to be working?
Probably 30, I think.
Great. Yeah. So you need to increase your rate by 25% then.
Wow. Yeah.
Which is doable. Yeah. If you doubled it, that might be a shock. 50% might feel a bit, I think 25 is, very reasonable.
Can I ask you a question? I have in my head the rate that I charge, and I think that I have had people before say, "Oh no, we can't afford that. So and so down the road's charging less, etc."
Good.
And sometimes I think that clients get really hung up on what your day or hourly rate is, and I'm wondering if I can keep my rate as what it is, but that I maybe need to actually make sure that I'm really planning in extra time in the actual quote for project management and stuff, or maybe can cover it in that way, so I'm not sort of massively putting people off if they literally just come to me and say, "Oh, what's your hourly rate?" Because I think sometimes that number's a little bit it doesn't really mean anything if you don't know how long it's going to take you in the first place. It's almost like a value. I'm worth this much.
Yeah, either way, you need to save 25% of your time. So if it's that you're charging for more of those working hours without taking the piss, obviously it should be chargeable stuff. But if that's project management, etc., that's fine. But I'm kind of, the businessman in me is that sidestepping the fact you actually should be increasing your rates, and you could, but you're just too scared to, because maybe you could do both. So maybe you charge for hours where you should be charging for them, and you increase your rate, and suddenly you're actually earning 50% more.
I'm a millionaire.
And working less.
I want to challenge this to everybody, because I think that as I hear it, I think, well, yeah, that makes perfect sense. And I've read these things too before, and I agree 100% that it's a good way to do it. But it's really scary to do. I think it's so easy to say to someone to do it, but it's really scary to actually do. So I would say, as devil's advocate, I would say, Tom, why don't you increase the price of your bundles are already dropping things from $1,700 down to $29, I believe, or $39. Why don't you increase them by 25%? You would have so much more wiggle room to get even more people to provide more value. You're better than everyone else in the industry. Why are you charging the same amount as everyone in the industry? And I would say the same thing about Ian, his successful product now. Why don't you bring it up to 25, or Lisa, or me? And I know exactly what the reason is. The reason is because you guys know if you bring it up that your sales will go down.
Yes,
and no.
And I think that's a fantastic point. Damn you. Okay, truthfully, the reason I don't want to do that is because for us to do that as a business with, a decent sized team, etc., the repercussions are too severe. So to do it, and we will do it in the future, we probably need to have some degree of split testing and statistical, accuracy on the impact that's going to have on the business and subsequently our employees' lives. So it's a bigger deal. But I had the same issue when I was
not
a freelancer.
To an independent contractor, it's her life. It's just as much important to her life as it is to yours. Yeah,
what I'm saying is, when I was a freelancer, I feel like there is to a degree less risk, because there is, there are clients coming in, and so particularly with new clients, it's a testing pool, right?
Yeah.
So if you get 3 new clients and you try it on one of them, great. And if it's too high for them, you've still got the other 2. And I just know from experience, I probably shouldn't admit this, but I've genuinely done this a few times where I wrote an email with the quote, and then I set antagonizing for 5 minutes, and I increased it literally by about 25%. And I was cringing, and I hit the send button, and I felt so terrified and awkward. And what if that's blowing the whole thing? And when they wrote back and accepted it, which they actually did every single time, I thought, wow, that 5 minutes made me so much money, literally from 5 minutes of antagonizing and hitting send. It's the easiest money you ever make, and and that proves what your true worth is. It's not that you're pulling the wool over someone's eyes or anything like that. The market pays what you're worth. You could, Meg, you could say to your client, I want £1 million. They probably wouldn't pay it. There will be a sweet spot, and that is not you inflating your price. It's the market telling you what your talent is worth.
Do you think that also when you're selling digital products versus selling your time, with a digital product, you can price it just right so that you sell lots of it, but I can only sell my time once. So
no, there's a big difference there. Yeah.
I can see that you could probably put the price up on me, but if you put the price up on something that you can sell lots of times, you're just going to sell less of, there's that line, isn't there?
There is, and like the same principle does apply to you, but I just feel like it would be very easy to test without like, suddenly damaging your entire business overnight.
Yeah, definitely.
What you wouldn't do, you wouldn't email every single client and say, by the way, all of you, I'm damaging my rates. They all turn around and say no, and suddenly you have to like be on the back foot. You would start testing it out one person at a time and go, oh, okay, they went for it. So did they. And before you know it, oh, that's my new rate.
Tell me, is it normal practice in the UK or where you are that you approach each job or quote on jobs per hour rather than the actual end, rather than a sum amount?
There's two different ways, but both ways really.
Okay.
And I do it both ways for different clients depending on what they want. But nothing I do can really be packaged particularly easily into one thing, into one lump.
Okay.
So
because what I used to do was, I because everybody used to ask me the same question, what's your hourly rate? And the first thing I would say is, well, that's not really important because I don't really quote per hour. I quote per job. So I would quote them what I thought the job would cost me to do, and then I would add a buffer because there's always going to be extra, as you said, emails, scheduling, organizing, listening to clients, etc., etc. So I'd add a buffer, and then as a disclaimer, I would say, this includes this and this and this. Anything over and above that is this, so much an hour. So that way it covered me what I thought was fair for the job. And they weren't like, okay, I quoted for 6 hours, but I actually spent 8 and I can't really charge for that 8, I don't know.
Yeah.
I just, it's just something to think about.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah.
Have you got any of those systems in place, or are you kind of just going with?
Yeah, no, I do have a reasonably good system in place. I've kind of packaged up example projects and I have it in like a brochure that I send out to people. And so it gives a rough idea without giving them my actual hourly rate, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
And I do try and avoid the just saying, oh, my rate's this. And do try, like you say, Lisa, I do try and explain it a bit that, but I can do it in this many hours, or days.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There's warning signs on certain clients if they just come along and go, how much for a logo design?
Yeah,
or,
true.
like you say, what is your hourly rate or stuff like that. There's like leading questions and you're like, no, I'm not going to tell them, and that's not going to be the client for me. So
definitely.
I've stopped doing hourly rate. I can't remember the last time I did hourly rate. I'm just like, it's just for the day. So then, however long it takes me, it's I've got a minimum of that day, rather than it going down to the hour. And you can sometimes do half a day. And then for me, that's worked better because I'm lazy and I can't keep track of hours. So I just like, roughly half a day.
I really that's kind of like Mecca for me. I'd like to be there, to just be, I've heard lots of people say it's just a day or half a day and that's it. But because I've got to be so flexible, leaving to pick Wes up at 3 sometimes, it makes more sense for me to record every hour so I know exactly how much time I've done for the client.
I don't know if this is just me. We work with people who charge hourly and day rates. For me, the day rate feels more professional.
Yeah.
That's what agencies would charge, I suppose.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah.
Yeah. If I got hourly rate, that feels more. It feels slightly more junior, and that's like anyone we pay an hourly rate. That is not to undermine them whatsoever. But when I think of the people that are day rates, it's often been, very specialist people, high-end developers and coders and things like that, photographers, for example. And that feels very manageable for me as a cost. If anything, I feel a bit uneasy. Like an hourly rate, I'm like, I feel like that could just inflate endlessly, and I don't know how many hours there are going to be. Whereas if they go, it's going to be about 2 days, and here's my day rate, I'm like, yep, okay, that's a very like solid cost, rather than lots of little miniature numbers floating around, and I don't know what it's going to end up being as a total.
Exactly.
And also that they've taken into account, they think, oh, it's going to take me a day and a half. I'll say 2 days. And for for you would think that as well. So you know that it's going to be a maximum of roughly 2 days because they put that in. You know that they would have thought about that. Whereas an hourly rate, they won't. They would say how much they think it's going to cost, and then it'll be on top of that any extras. Whereas, I think it gives you more confidence in hiring them if they say a day rate.
And don't let your life and being a mum put you off that, because you can have a day rate even if that day is spread over 2 days.
A day for you could be an hour. You know, no one says it has to be 7 hours or 8 hours. So your working day is from whenever when you drop him off or when you to when you pick him up. So for my days, some days I finish a bit earlier because I need to look after my son. So my daughter can go out and with my wife, and so my day is going to be completely different from like Tom's, who hasn't got any children, and his day might be like 12, 14 hours long. So you don't have to justify what your day is. As long as the work's being done.
Exactly. And the other reason why I stopped doing the hourly rate was, I mean, this sounds bizarre, but I knew that I worked a lot faster than, say, like a new person or, like somebody who I don't know, wasn't as proficient in design or whatever. So basically, I'm being penalized, essentially, because I was working so much faster in that hour, getting so much more done, and the client was only paying me in that hour. So even though, so that's why I moved over to like a job rate, because I knew what I could do in that time. And, even if it takes you 2 hours, but you kind of essentially charge for 5, there's nothing wrong with that, because I just knew I could work that job a lot faster than, say, the next guy or whatever. What I'm saying is you got to take advantage of the fact that you Dustin's laughing at my techniques.
No, I love it. Wait, I just have something to add after that. Go ahead.
I think you have to take advantage of the fact that you have experience, that you have all this knowledge already behind you, and every time you sit down in front of a computer to do the work for the client, all this coming with it. So it's not only you sitting in front of the computer, you've also got to do so you also got to do like all the stuff that's coming with all your experience. So it's important to think about that.
I just wanted to add, I mean, this isn't the same thing like exactly, but it kind of illustrates your point really good. Is if like a hot dog vendor like charged you by like the 5-minute increment to make your hot dog, and he was like, hey, 5 minutes is up, like I only got this far, here you go, that will be $5, you'd be like, this is insane. So I started laughing because I thought of like what if restaurants did that, but it's true. Like, yeah, like you just want, like, at the end of the day, you're like, I want this. How much will it cost me? I like that. It's nice and clean, like Tom was saying. It's just
it's more. It'll be less stressful with you feeling a bit burnt or feeling overwhelmed with the work. It will make you it will make you enjoy going to pick up your son more. It will help you enjoy the work more if you know that it's on my terms, that this day is how this day is. So
exactly.
And you don't have to worry about those hours spent doing emails then.
Yes.
And not only your family time, but you'll start feeling hopefully more inspired with your work. The quality will go up because you're doing quality over quantity. There's endless benefits, and I think we could have gone down a lot of different paths in this episode, but I didn't want to sit here and start telling you like deep breathing exercises to feel less stressed, because it's better to actually deal with the root problem and have like a real solution rather than just continuing to fight burnout. You know what I mean? You'd rather kind of fix it at the source.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. Thank you very much. That has been really helpful, actually.
And are you going to do it though?
Because you've got 4 people watching you now, and you've got accountability, and however many thousand listeners as well.
Don't put out.
But I've got a way.
Try it on a few and see what happens.
I've got a way we can test it out. Whereas we can do like a mystery shopper. So we say, well, we've got this project and we list it all out and stuff like that. What's your day rate?
Yeah.
With our secret agency, with our agency we made.
Yeah.
So much.
You're going to jump on a Skype call with Dustin in his alter ego outfit and you just won't recognize him.
Greasy mafia guy.
These chicken heads.
Yeah, exactly. Look out for the blazer. So yeah, Meg, have you got any final questions or anything that we can help with?
No, I think actually quite a lot of those things are things, when you should do those things, but until you've talked through them with people, it doesn't.
Yeah.
All of a sudden I'm thinking, because I do day rates for some clients, but not others. And actually just to cut out the ones that I don't do day rates for would immediately cut some of the stress.
Mm-hmm.
That would be lots of the little bits and bobs that stress me out every day gone.
Yeah.
So that's really good. And the hourly rate or the day, putting my day rate up, definitely going to be thinking about that a bit more. At least going to get everyone who's still on a lower rate off the lower rate onto because I only put my rates up about 6 months ago. So
doesn't really matter.
Yeah, it's fine. Like if the work's still coming in, which it is, good for you.
Yeah.
If anything, the ones on the low rate, they're not fair to your other people.
That's true. But you have to judge each client on their own merits. Some of them are worth it in other ways.
Yes.
If they're a more creative brief or something like that, sometimes it's worth it. But
no, I get that. Well, yeah, it was really good having you on the show, Meg. I feel like we've talked quite a lot. To be honest, it would have been great to. I know we've chatted off the show, so hopefully we can catch up soon and possibly even have you back on the show. I would love to hear more about your particular story. I'd love to go much more in depth on that. But I think it was, given that the main issue is burnout, I think it was important that we dug into some of the pricing stuff because that is such an obvious fix in my mind.
Yeah, thank you very much. It's been good.
Right.
It's been surreal as well to see you. I keep thinking I'm just watching you on YouTube.
We're talking about.
So, Meg, where can the wonderful listeners find you then?
Probably on Instagram's best. It's Meg_LaDoodle.
And that's LA, isn't it?
LA Doodle. Yeah.
Yes.
Or
Meg
just
_LaDoodle.
Yeah. Or just megansayers.com.
Cool.
In desperate need of updating now that I've seen all of your website critiques.
But yeah, I implore anyone listening, do go and follow Meg if you don't already. I know quite a few of the podcast listeners, because we've mentioned you on the show, a lot of the podcast listeners do follow your work and do support it, which is awesome. But if you haven't done that yet, please go and check Meg out. She is super talented. She's one of the people I follow where genuinely I get inspired when I see your work every day and do look forward to it. So
Same here.
Keep up what you're doing. You're an amazing creative and part of the community. So yeah, everyone go check out Meg's profile.
Thank you very much.
Cool. Well, hopefully we can chat again in the future. And as I'm sure there is much more to your journey and what you're building that we can dig into, but do report back. And we would love to, if in like a month on the show, we can be like, everyone, Meg did it. And suddenly she's not burnt out anymore. That would be a win for the podcast.
That would be amazing. Yeah. Okay.
Awesome. All right. Well, take care, Megan. Thanks again for coming on the show. Really appreciate your time.
Thanks.
See you later.
Bye.
Thanks so much for listening to this week's episode. We hope that you found our pricing tips for Meg helpful, and if you've been resistant to raising your prices, hopefully this episode gave you some solid pointers to get there. As always, you can find full show notes over at honestdesigners.com or find us over on iTunes by searching for The Honest Designers Show. And remember, we're now on social media too, if you search for Honest Designers. If today's episode helped you, then it would mean the absolute world to us if you took a quick moment to leave us a review on iTunes, as this is one of the best ways for other designers to discover the show. Thanks again for tuning in, and we will see you next week right here on The Honest Designers Show.